The book of Exodus is the second book of the Torah and is 40 chapters long and can be divided into three main sections: bondage from chapters 1 to 12, liberation from chapters 13 to 18, and the covenant from chapters 19 to 40. The first part, which deals with bondage, can be further divided into two parts, with chapters 1 through 6 being slavery and chapters 7 through 12 being the 10 plagues. Let's take a look at the first part of bondage story, which is chapters 1 through 6, which deals with slavery. This section describes the background of God's sending of the 10 plagues. When the Israelites were suffering under slavery, how God sent Moses into the land, and how God called Moses into the land and showed him signs as evidence of his calling, and how Moses met with Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and demanded liberation, but was rejected. And when Moses became discouraged, God comforted him. Next, we'll look at chapters 7 through 12, the 10 plagues of the bondage story, in which God sends 10 plagues on Egypt in response to Pharaoh's refusal to free Israel. God brings first the plagues of blood, then the plagues of frogs, lice, and flies, then the plagues of cattle diseases, boils, and hail, then the plagues of locusts and darkness, and then the final plague, the death of the firstborn, which God foretells and delivers, just as he foretells. Next, we'll look at the second part of the story, the liberation, in chapters 13 through 18, which depicts the Israelites' journey from Ramesses in the region of Goshen, after their liberation from Egypt, to their arrival near Mount Sinai. After exiting Egypt, the Israelites, led by a pillar of fire and cloud, passed through the Red Sea. They then passed through Marah, where bitter water is turned into sweet water, and then through Elim, the site of 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. They then pass through the wilderness of Sin, where the miracle of the manna and the quail takes place, and arrive at Rephidim, where they drink water from the rock and win the battle against Amalek. And Moses, while in Rephidim, Moses is visited by his father-in-law, Jethro, and on his advice, reorganizes the early administration of Israel. This brings us to the third and final part of the story, the covenant, which is recorded in chapters 19 through 40. This covenant section can be further divided into four sections: the law in chapters 19 through 24, instructions for the tabernacle in chapters 25 through 30, the golden calf in chapters 31 through 34, and the construction of the tabernacle in chapters 35 through 40. Let's first look at the law in chapters 19 through 24. In this section, God makes a covenant with the Israelites on Mount Sinai and gives them the law, including the 10 commandments, which God's people are to keep. First, God descends on Mount Sinai to make a covenant with the Israelites and gives them the law, including the 10 commandments, the civil laws on servants, the death penalty, compensation for injuries, and the civil laws on damages, protection of the weak, and the laws on the litigation and feasts. Then God calls Moses, and Moses ascends Mount Sinai. The next section of the covenant is chapters 25 through 30, which deal with the instructions for the tabernacle. In this section, God commands Moses on Mount Sinai that the people are to live centered around the tabernacle, and God gives Moses the instructions for the construction of the tabernacle. First, God gives the instructions for the construction of the most holy place and the holy things in the holy place, namely the ark of the testimony, the table of showbread, and the candlestick. Then the instructions for the construction of the tabernacle pattern that protects the holy things. Then the instructions for the construction of the altar of burnt offering and the tabernacle fence, which were located outside the tabernacle. Then the instructions for the construction of the priestly garments, and the instructions for the consecration of the priests who minister in the tabernacle. And finally, the instructions for the construction of the altar of incense and the laver, which were omitted from the above. For reference, chapters 25 through 30 can be viewed as a single chapter entitled Tabernacle Instructions, so that each chapter remains coherent and well organized. Next, we'll look at chapters 31 through 34. The golden calf is the focus of this part of the covenant. This section deals with the incident of Israel's idolatry of the golden calf. It begins with Moses coming down from Mount Sinai with the first set of tablets of the 10 Commandments, after being commanded by God to choose Bezalel and Aholiab as the builders. Then Moses sees the people making a golden calf and breaks the tablets. Then Moses repents to God for them and intercedes. Then God forgives the people after Moses' intercession and renews the covenant by making the second set of tablets of the Ten Commandments. The final section of the covenant is chapters 35 through 40, which deals with the construction of the tabernacle, in which the restored Israelites, led by Bezalel and Aholiab, construct the tabernacle according to God's instructions. This section consists of the Israelites preparing for the construction of the tabernacle by making offerings and selecting the builders of the tabernacle, followed by the construction of the tabernacle and the making of holy things, and then by finishing the construction of the court equipments and the fence, completing the erection of tabernacle, and culminating in the consecration of the tabernacle to God. It is helpful to think of these chapters as corresponding to the process of building the church. It is also helpful to think of chapters 35 through 40 as a single chapter and call it tabernacle construction, so that the chapters in this section remain coherent and easily distinguishable from chapters 25 through 30, which deal with the tabernacle instructions. So let's take a look at the Israelites' journey from Egypt to Mount Sinai, as recorded in chapters 12 through 18 of the book of Exodus. First, the Israelites set out from Ramesses in Egypt and arrive at Succoth, where they celebrate the Passover. Led by a pillar of fire and cloud, they pass through the Red Sea, which is parted by God's power, and arrive at Marah, where God quenches their thirst by turning bitter water into sweet water. They then pitch their tent at Elim, where there are 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. After leaving Elim and entering the wilderness of Sin, the Israelites suffer from hunger, and God provides manna and quail to satisfy their hunger. Then, after leaving the wilderness and pitching their tents at Rephidim, the Israelites again suffer from a lack of water to drink, and God hears their pleas and brings forth water from the rock to quench their thirst. From there, the Israelites go on to defeat Amalek, who have blocked their way. From there, Moses reorganizes the administration of Israel, following the advice of his father-in-law Jethro, who has visited him and establishes a system of chiefs, centurions, 50s, and 10s. The Israelites then leave Rephidim and pitch their tents near Mount Sinai in the Sinai wilderness, where God bestows the 10 Commandments and the law for the Israelites and gives them the tabernacle instructions. However, it is here that the Israelites incur God's wrath by worshiping the golden calf. And the pattern and layout of the tabernacle, and the holy things and priestly garments in the tabernacle, which are covered in chapters 25 through 30 and 35 through 40, can be better understood by referring to the following illustrations. First, a three-dimensional view of the tabernacle and its surroundings. Centered on the tabernacle, there is a fence that surrounds the tabernacle. Inside the tabernacle fence is the altar of burnt offering, where the sacrifices were offered. And outside the door into the tabernacle is the laver, where water was prepared for the high priest to wash himself in the holy place. The tabernacle fence surrounding the tabernacle measures 100 cubits wide, which is 45 meters, and 50 cubits long, which is 22.5 meters. Here's a floor plan of the tabernacle and its surroundings. The tabernacle is divided into the holy place and the most holy place, with the veil being the doorway from the holy place to the most holy place. The holy place is 20 cubits wide, which is 9 meters wide, and 10 cubits long, which is 4.5 meters long, while the most holy place is square, measuring 10 cubits by 10 cubits, which is 4.5 meters on all sides. When we look at the floor plan, we can see the holy things placed inside the tabernacle, in the most holy place. There is a table of shewbread on the north side and a candlestick on the south side, facing each other. Also, at the door, which is a veil that enters the most holy place, there is the altar of incense, and when you open the veil in the holy place and enter the most holy place, there is the Ark of the Testimony. Here's a closer look at the holy things in the tabernacle. Firstly, the Ark of the Testimony in the most holy place is framed in shittim wood, overlaid with pure gold and crowned with gold round about. This Ark of the Testimony was fastened to rings so that it could be moved, and the testimony were placed within it. Also, the two cherubim were connected at each end around the Ark of the Testimony, so that the area above the Ark of the Testimony would serve as the mercy seat. The candlestick in the holy place, facing the table of showbread, was made of pure gold, of beaten work, with a shaft, branches, bowls, knops, and flowers, centered on a single candlestick, and branched on either side by 3 branches made of almond blossoms. Thus, a total of 7 lamps out of this candlestick may give light to the inside of the tabernacle. Facing the candlestick in the holy place is the table of showbread, which is made of shittim wood and overlaid with pure gold and crowned with gold round about. 4 rings of gold were placed on it so that it could be moved, and it was moved by staves also wrapped in gold. On the table was always showbread, so that it might be an offering to God. The altar of incense, which was in the middle of the way, from the holy place to the most holy place, was framed in shittim wood, overlaid with pure gold and crowned with gold round about. The altar of incense had 2 rings of gold so that it could be moved, and it was moved with staves also overlaid with gold. The altar of incense was a holy thing that allowed incense to be burned before God in the morning and in the evening, and it was considered most holy. So God had Aaron make atonement for it with the blood of the sin offering once a year. The laver, which was located between the altar of burnt offering and the holy place in the court of the tabernacle, that is within the tabernacle fence, was made of brass. When the high priest entered the tabernacle or approached the altar to perform his duties, he was prepared to wash in the water of the laver to avoid death. The altar of burnt offering, located in the court of the tabernacle, within the fence of the tabernacle, was made of shittim wood and overlaid with brass. It had 4 brass rings for mobility, and staves were used to move it around. The altar of burnt offering was a holy object, designed to offer sacrifices of atoning blood to God. The priestly garments consisted of a breastplate, ephod, robe, broidered coat, mitre, and girdle, made of gold, and blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine linen. On the ephod were to be placed 2 onyx stones, with the names of the 6 tribes engraved on each stone. On the breastplate, or the breastplate of judgment, were to be placed 12 jewels, 3 horizontal and 4 vertical, with the name of 1 tribe engraved on each jewel. And inside the breastplate were to be placed the Urim and Thummim, the holy things used to inquire the will of God.